Dragon Houston on the big loop. We're going to switch over. We're going to switch over our big loop config. Going to take about 5 minutes. We're starting that now.
Okay, copy.
We are in 2.9 complete. Dragon cabin configuration for departure complete. With the exception of 2.7, we will not load the footrest until mechanized seated.
Okay, we'll pass it along.
That on too. If you don't lose me in a reconfig, we're just doing about your go, SpaceX and 3.1, but I think we need the big loop for that.
Yeah, still have you stand by.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop comm check.
SpaceX, Dragon on the big loop, loud and clear.
Excellent, Matt. Good to hear from you. Got you loud and clear as well. And I think I copied y'all are at 2.9 in 2.103. Can you confirm?
Affirmative. Dragon configuration for departure complete in 2.9 with the exception of seats 2 and 3 footrest, which will come post-suit downing.
Okay, excellent news. To keep you going in that procedure, I've got LIO cartridge 2 for install, and after that, there's some more details on the hatch closure event detail. How copy?
Copy. So understand we are go in 3.1 for LIO into LIO cartridge 2. Is that correct?
Standby 1.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome here to Launchpad and our beginning of our live coverage of Crew 8's return to Earth. We are now just over 2 hours away from undocking, but are about 30 minutes away from hatch closure. We're listening in to live station to ground to Hawthorne Communications as Crew 8 prepares to close the hatch and begin their journey home. Having launched 233 days ago, the crew expected to splash down in just over a day and a half. We'll be staying live through all of the procedures as Crew 8 returns home with our Dragon tracker. If you're watching on the unhatching stream, we'll be staying live all the way through hatching and undocking, and then we'll invite you to join the Dragon tracker, which will stay live all the way to splashdown. We'll, of course, be bringing you live commentary of Return to Earth with Q-orbit burn, re-entry, and splashdown, and then crew recovery operations. So we hope you'll join us for that in about a day and a half, but we'll listen back into the ground as the crew prepares to close the hatch of the Crew Dragon cabin.
We are standing by 5 minutes for your call on the go. No problem.
Okay, sounds good.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are live here in Mission Control Houston at the International Space Station's Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Texas. This view, coming to you live from the International Space Station, is of the interior of Dragon Endeavour. Endeavour will be carrying home the Crew 8 astronauts and cosmonaut today with an undocking that's scheduled at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. Dragon Endeavour arrived at the International Space Station 232 days ago.
Endeavour Houston, com check on the RF big loop. We've completed the configuration. Oh, no, it looks like you were trying to...
Dragon on the big loop, how's your loud and clear?
Yeah, roger that. I couldn't tell if you were trying to hear me or not. Go ahead and initiate a com check with MCCX.
And you just heard some of the procedures taking place to get ready for that undock. Dragon...
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, com check.
Dragon, we've got you on the big loop loud and clear. And syncing back on LIO, your go for LIO cartridge 2 install and IMV duct teardown 2.103, 3.1. How copy?
Copy, LIO cartridge 2, IMV duct teardown. We'll go.
Those you just heard are voices of our flight director on console today, Paul Kanya, alongside NASA astronaut Matt Dominic. Dragon Endeavour arrived at the International Space Station 232 days ago. In total, the spacecraft has spent 236 days in space by the time it splashes down off the coast of Florida. Splashdown is scheduled for Friday, October 25th at approximately 2:29 a.m. Central Time, 3:29 a.m. Eastern, and again, that is off the coast of Florida. Currently, teams here in Mission Control Houston and the teams in Hawthorne are working together in preparation for the undocking of the spacecraft. That's once again coming up today at 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, the crew aboard the space station are preparing for the same thing.
Dragon on the big loop. LIO cartridge 2 was in the active slot. Seals removed and put back in the active slot.
SpaceX copied.
And coming to you live are views of Dragon Endeavour's exterior as it's docked to the International Space Station. The space station is currently above the east coast or east side of Asia. We have 4 crew members returning to Earth that include NASA astronauts Commander Matt Dominic, NASA astronaut and Commander Matt Dominic, pilot Michael Barrett, mission specialist Jeanette Epps, alongside Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin. Once again, splashdown is scheduled for Friday, October 25th at 2:29 a.m. Eastern, 3:29 a.m. Central. Crew 8 took 3,776 orbits of our Earth, and they traveled 100,132 statute miles. Once again, views are coming to you live from Dragon Endeavour, docked outside the International Space Station, that will be carrying the Crew 8 astronauts and cosmonaut home today, with an undocking that's scheduled at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. You're now getting another look inside with the crew there on your screen. You can see Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin as he gets secure in his seat, ready to get home. NASA astronaut Michael Barrett assisting him in the process. And to the far right of your screen, you'll also see NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps working with her colleague and NASA astronaut Commander Matt Dominic as she gets suited up in her seat, ready for undock. The remaining crew members will have a chance to do the same and get into their flight suits once they are in their seats and completed all of their procedures to get ready for undock. The crew will remain in their spacesuits through undocking. Again, that undocking is taking place at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. The crew will be able to doff their suits, but they're anticipating a splashdown on Friday morning at 2:29 a.m. Central, 3:29 a.m. Eastern off the coast of Florida. Between that time, they will be off duty in Dragon Endeavour. Once the undock command is set, it takes only a few minutes for the hooks to open and fully detach from Dragon from the space station.
Station Eastern Space Ground 2 for a Node 2 camera.
Neil, heard you on 2. You like a Node 2 cam?
Yeah, I'd like to get a Node 2 camera set up and facing the hatch.
And work.
And that's the Zenith hatch.
As mentioned, it only takes a few minutes for the hooks to open and fully detach Dragon from the space station. Once that happens, there'll be a few short firings of the thrusters.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule. Just standing by your go for hatch closure, Dragon hatch closure.
Standby 1.
We'll go.
As you heard, we're gearing up for hatch closure.
And Houston Station on 2, node 2, camera 1.
Roger.
Once Dragon fully detaches itself from the space station, there will be a few short firings of the thrusters before Dragon starts to back away. Those are called the Dragon undock burns. Then we'll proceed into the departure burns, continuing to move away from the zenith port and the space-facing side of the International Space Station. Even though Crew 8 will be detached from the space station at that time, we'll still be in integrated operations with the International Space Station, as the crew will still be in the approach ellipsoid and keep out sphere. These are the invisible boundaries that we use in mission control to monitor the arriving and departing of visiting spacecraft. Once the crew and Dragon exit the approach ellipsoid, we will be out of the joint operations, and SpaceX will continue to control the rest of the flight, with Dragon autonomously flying the entire way home. Meanwhile, Mission Control will continue to monitor the crew of astronauts and cosmonaut. While we will not be on the air after we exit the approach ellipsoid, we will continue to provide periodic updates through our mission audio coverage, which you can find on nasa.gov. Once again, this view is of Dragon Endeavour, which will be bringing Crew 8 home after they will have spent a total of 236 days in space. Currently, teams here in Mission Control and the teams in Hawthorne are working together in preparation for the undocking of the spacecraft that's once again coming up at 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern.
Station Houston, Space Ground 2 for Butch and Dragon prep procedure.
This view coming to you live is of the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. We have Flight Director Paul Kanya on console today.
Just checking, making sure you're done with through step 3.6 of 2.103 Dragon departure prep through hatch close.
And this view is coming to you live of a Dragon Endeavour docked to the International Space Station. Crew 8 continues to conduct and complete procedures.
It's stowed in the bag. The APAS IMB is in the bag, and the IDA IMB is rolled back and underneath the bungee. What you looking for?
Yeah, that's what we were looking for. Thanks, Butch.
And Neil, update on the Butch deployed a new 1.0 serial number 5136 for the Zenith IMB duct. We couldn't find the 1.0 that was called out in the procedure.
Roger.
Aboard the International Space Station, we have Commander Sonny Williams of NASA, along with NASA astronaut Nick Hague, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin, Roscosmos cosmonaut Ivan Wagner, and NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore. We also have NASA astronaut Nick Hague, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grobunov, and NASA astronaut Don Pettit. The Crew 9 crew that recently...
Just waiting on one last step here before we give you the go for hatch closure, so keep standing by.
And we just heard that...
No problem. We're just a little bit ahead of schedule on our side. Happy to hang out.
And we are getting ready to get that go for hatch closure. The Crew 9 crew that recently arrived to the space station will remain on board for approximately 5 months, where they will continue to conduct science investigations and technology demonstrations.
Dragon SpaceX, your go for hatch closure, 2.103, 3.8.
2.103, 3.8, go for hatch closure.
And with that communication we just heard, we are go for hatch closure. Dragon Endeavour will be carrying the Crew 8 astronauts and cosmonaut home today with an undocking that's scheduled at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. As Crew 9 conducts that science for the next 5 months, you can see some of that here with the crew stowage that you see on board Dragon. The crew worked to load these cargo bags as well as the cold payloads, bringing back that critical research.
On the big loop, hatch closed for event details.
Copy, hatch closed, and we're going to sequence the state machine to reflect that.
Copy. We see the PPRV open.
And with that, we heard that the hatch has closed, with all 4 crew members inside Dragon. Closest to your screen, you see Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin. And on the furthest part of your screen, the crew member that you see in the flight suit over there is NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps. Meanwhile, Commander Matt Dominic and NASA astronaut Michael Barrett continue to conduct procedures.
Say again, Butch.
For hatch closure, I'm up to step 4 now. It looks like I can go to 5.3. Are you giving me to continue there and hold at 5.3?
Check it.
If you're just joining us at approximately 2:24 p.m. Central, 3:24 p.m. Eastern, the hatch for Crew 8's Dragon Endeavour has closed. Meanwhile, we will prepare for procedures as we get ready for undocking.
Hey, Butch, Houston back with you on 2. You're good to go up to step 5.3.
Hey, go for 5.3. Here we go.
And Butch, that's up to 5.3.
Once the crew undocks today, they will have spent approximately 236 days in space, and they're preparing to splash down off the coast of Florida on Friday. We anticipate that undocking will happen here in just a little bit at 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern, with our coverage going live at 3:45 p.m. Central, 4:45 p.m. Eastern. We're taking another look inside Dragon Endeavour as we prepare to undock from the International Space Station. We now have 3 out of the 4 crew members in their suits getting ready to be seated as NASA astronaut Michael Barrett, Splashdown of Crew 8 is scheduled for Friday, October 25th at approximately 2:29 a.m. Central, 3:29 a.m. Eastern, off the coast of Florida. Currently, teams here in Mission Control Houston and the teams in Hawthorne are working together in preparation for the undocking of the spacecraft.
Houston Station on 2 is photos of the PMA. Seals are on SSC 12.
Roger.
Crew 8 conducted new science to prepare for human exploration beyond low Earth orbit. Experiments included using stem cells to create organoid models to study diseases. They also studied the effects of microgravity and UV radiation on plants at a cellular level. And the crew also tested whether wearing pressure cuffs on the legs could prevent fluid shifts to reduce health problems in astronauts. These are just a few of more than the 200 scientific experiments and technology demonstrations that took place during their mission. Once the undock command is set for the crew, it takes a few minutes for the hooks to open and fully detach Dragon from the space station. The Crew 8 mission launched aboard the SpaceX's Dragon crew spacecraft in March of this year. And this Dragon spacecraft is named Endeavour. It previously supported NASA's Demo 2, Crew 2, and Crew 6, as well as Axiom Space's 8X1 flights to and from the International Space Station. You are looking live inside Crew 8's Dragon Endeavour, where you see now all 4 crew members suited up in their flight suits, ready to undock from the International Space Station. Again, that undocking is taking place at 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern.
Houston Station for regenerate a urine processor.
And Don, your go if you're looking for a go in that activity.
Looking for a go.
You got it.
Once the hooks are open and fully detached Dragon from the space station, there will be a few short firings of the thrusters. And that's before Dragon starts to back away, and those are called the Dragon undock burns. We'll then proceed into the departure burns, continuing to move away from the zenith port and space-facing side of the International Space Station.
Houston Station on 2 for a red exercise.
Go ahead.
Yes, FE5 is ready to begin a red exercise, and the Note 3 camera is set up for downlink.
Okay, and we got a good view.
And is there going to be a need for privatized loop or not for this exercise?
Nope, it'll be unsupported here on the ground, but we like the video.
Copy that.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, city com check.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, that was a good suited comm check, had you loud and clear, how me?
Loud and clear.
And with that, Matt, I've got a few updates for you. First, on the thermal control system, we commanded the hex bypass to allow crew control. It's on the max cooling setting right now. Quick reminder that cabin temp control is through procedure 4.080 until pre-chill prior to deorbit. How copy?
Dragon.
Okay, and with that, the next event I'm tracking is suit leak checks. When you're ready, your go for 4.011.
Hey, we are go for 4.011. Stay back. SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. We have 5.2. We've got good icon check amongst the crew.
And Dragon, I missed your last. Say again.
Reporting in 5.2. We got good ICOM check for all the crew, and we are procedure complete with suit donning. Moving on to suit leak checks.
SpaceX copies.
This view coming to you live is from the International Space Station. It's of Dragon Endeavour. Endeavour will be carrying the Crew 8 astronauts and cosmonaut home today, with an undocking that's scheduled at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. Splashdown is scheduled for Friday, October 25th at approximately 2:29 a.m. Central, 3:29 a.m. Eastern off the coast of Florida.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. Mike went out with his settings for Dragon to ground. How did you read him?
We did not copy anything on Dragon to ground. Let us take another look at the config here. Hold off on any more comm checks for now.
Second copies, and with that, we'll keep pushing the leak check while you guys troubleshoot getting the ground.
Even though Dragon Endeavour will be detached from the space station, we will still be in integrated operations with the International Space Station, as the crew will still be in the approach ellipsoid and keep out sphere.
Go to execute 5.3 subs.
Okay, closing hatch.
These are invisible boundaries that we use in Mission Control Houston to monitor the arriving and departing of visiting spacecraft. Once the crew and Dragon exit the approach ellipsoid, we will be out of joint operations, and SpaceX will continue to control the rest of the flight, with Dragon autonomously flying the entire way home. Meanwhile,
On the big loop, we are ready to pressurize in 2.2.
Standby 1, we've got command here on the nitrox system. Standby 1.
Dragon standing by.
Houston Station on 2 for your transfer.
Hey, Don, can you meet me on space to ground 4, please?
We like him right here, Neil.
we'll take one more look inside Dragon Endeavour as we prepare to wrap up our hatch closure coverage this afternoon.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking on a live view from onboard Crew Dragon, where the Crew 8 crew are suited up, the hatch is closed, and they are getting ready to depart the International Space Station. We are 1 hour, 18 minutes, about 30 seconds away from that scheduled undocking. Of course, that schedule is fluid and can transfer as time goes on. NASA is getting ready to take a quick comment. NASA is getting ready to take a commentary break on their feed here, but we'll be staying live all the way through. If you're watching on the stream that says live Crew 8 ISS Undocking, we'll be live on that stream all the way through the undocking and the exit of the approach ellipsoid. If you're on our Dragon tracker, this stream will be staying live all the way through splashdown and Dragon operations. 1 day, 11 hours and 40 minutes, plus about an hour or so for Dragon recovery and that crew welcome home. Here at the Launchpad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. We're going to be answering your guys' comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll do our best to answer those live. We'll be looking at live views from onboard the ISS, as well as continuing to listen in to station-to-ground communications. Even when NASA takes their commentary break, we'll be able to hear that station-to-ground loop, the big loop, as the crew prepares final checkouts in preparation for undocking. We're also monitoring the schedule at the ISS, as we do expect the Crew 9 Dragon to be relocated up to where the Crew 8 Dragon currently is in the coming weeks, and of course we'll bring you live coverage now. There's NASA wrapping up their coverage for a little bit. They'll begin their coverage for undocking about an hour, and we'll patch them in, but we do have these live views from on board the International Space. They will drop out just like that as we pass over different parts of the Earth. The ISS currently passing over southern tip of South America, so we should pick that back up, probably by Africa somewhere there. We'll hopefully get a ground station with those live views, but we do have station to ground in between, so we can listen into that. Undocking 1 hour, 16 minutes, 30 seconds from now, so don't head anywhere, and then we'll be answering your comments and questions. Continue to send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We're also on that road to 500,000 subscribers. I can't believe we're saying that. So if you haven't yet, take a moment, share out the stream, but make sure you subscribe here at the Launchpad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and there's those live views back from the ISS. I saw a question that came in the chat from Create the Imaginable. Are the 2 stranded astronauts coming back? So they weren't stranded technically, but no, they will be staying on board till February. They are officially part of Crew 9. Crew 9 launched with 2 astronauts a couple of weeks ago, and then Butch and Sunny from Starliner officially joined that crew as they were already on board station, and they'll come home no earlier than February of 2025. As I said, we're about an hour, 15 minutes away from undocking, so you can keep sending in those comments and questions and sharing out the stream. And let's listen back in to NASA, SpaceX, and International Space Station Big Loop as we count down to the undocking and the beginning of the return to Earth coverage for SpaceX Crew 8. Stay with us right here on the Launchpad Network.
It's Dragon on the big loop showing good loop checks.
Copy. We saw the same 4 good leak checks. Standby 1 for another comm check on Dragon to ground. Dragon in station, SpaceX on the big loop. Everything looks good on Dragon for the system reconfig after hatch closure. We're going to initiate vestibule depress shortly. How copy?
Dragon.
Vestibule depress in progress.
Dragon.
Houston, I'm about ready to close the hatch, except I cannot find any desiccant. We can't find that CTB. Both Nick and I have looked for it, and unless there's desiccant elsewhere. Also, I don't see any desiccant up there that I was supposed to remove either.
Copy. Checking. And Butch Houston on 2 for desiccant location.
Go ahead.
Hey, thinking that that 1.0 CTB you're looking for is also in cold deck 4, Columbus deck 4. It's 8.0 CTB, serial number 5082. Try that. And the one.
So you think 1.0 is inside the 8.0?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, well, look. Somebody broke the code. We found the CTB.
Roger.
Houston, note to forward overhead hatch and MPV are closed. I'll put more of these extra pictures. Actually, I'll just download them all again on SSC 12.
All right, copy all. Thanks, Butch.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Just a quick update. We were about 10 minutes late to vestibule leak check start, but that is in progress now. And we still have margin to start the undock sequence at 2100. We've got about 25 minutes of margin baked into the timeline. So, how copy?
Dragon copy.
Dragon SpaceX for big picture downhill plan.
Go ahead.
All right. Vestibule leak check still in progress. Looking good. I'll get back to you in a few minutes with more words there. In the meantime, more of a big picture here. Vehicles headed to Pensacola for a 10:25, 07:30 splashdown. Team's been working hard to find good weather. We're confident we'll have it there. Should be winds less than 5 knots, negligible waves, and a clear night out in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got the recovery vessel Megan on location and ready to get you out of the water. We are tracking multiple alternate sites on the Gulf and Atlantic sides, should we need them. And last note on weather, you should expect another update tomorrow morning. We'll let you know if any part of that splashdown plan has changed. How copy?
Copies all.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, glad to get you off station here. Quick note on the vehicle. The systems all look healthy from our perspective after 233 days. We're not tracking any notable issues headed into undock. That's actually all I had. Wanted to pass it to you, ask if you had any questions for the team.
We do actually have one question. We have a variety of timelines available. So with our iPad, just want to cross-check here. We're showing the ascending Pensacola timeline. Concur.
Yeah, when I looked this morning, it looked like there was only one Pensacola timeline on the repo. I see 2024, 1025 ascending into Pensacola. How copy?
Copy all, showing a water landing on that one at 0729:21. So that's what you got. We got a good cross-check and we're excited to go.
Copy 072921. I see the same thing. I'm confident we're working on the same timeline there. Yeah, good question.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure for Kuwait to serve aboard the International Space Station, and all of us were just commenting up here, seeing the initial lapse time on the display of 233 days. Counting.
Yes, sir. It's been quite a while. I'll get back to you in just a minute here on that vestibule leak check.
Second.
Houston 2 from the cupola Dragon. Undocking prep is complete and ISS crew is ready for departure.
Copy that, Butch. And Butch, Houston on the big loop, just for your SA, and it's part of my call-ups here. Undock sequence start time will be 2100 Zulu.
On 100Z, copy.
Dragon, SpaceX on the Big Loop Vestibule leak check nominal.
Dragon copies, good news.
It is October 23rd, and we're joining you today from SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. And you are looking at a live view of Mission Control Hawthorne. And we are awaiting Crew 8 to begin their journey back home at 2:05 p.m. Pacific Time or 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Departure from the International Space Station with NASA astronauts Matthew Dominic, Michael Barrett, Jeanette Epps, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin. I'm Jesse Anderson, the Senior Engineering Manager for Falcon Structures Manufacturing at SpaceX, and we are joined by a familiar face from NASA Communications, Sandra Jones.
Thanks so much for having me, Jesse. It's great to be back here.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in to watch live coverage of Dragon completing its 8th crew rotation mission to the space station through NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Crew 9 just arrived on station a few weeks ago on September 29th and will be taking over for Crew 8, who's now headed home. Crew 8's Dragon has become the longest dock to the station for a single mission, spending 232 days docked. Crew 2, which also flew on the same Dragon, held the previous record at 197 days and 20 hours, and Crew 7 was right up there at 197 days.
That's right, Jesse. Crew 8 launched earlier this year on March 3rd and has now spent 234 days in space, with almost 232 days docked to the International Space Station. During this time, they completed 3,760 orbits of the Earth, traveling more than 99 million statute miles. Endeavour continues to hold the record for the most time in orbit by a crewed spacecraft. Now, the crew is currently suited up, and you do see the crew on your screen there. They're suited up in their spacesuits, and the inside Dragon and the space station hatches are already sealed in preparation for their departure. Once Dragon departs the International Space Station, the crew's flight home is expected to last around 34 hours. Shortly after separation, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of carefully choreographed maneuvers or departure burns. This increases the distance between the spacecraft and the International Space Station. Dragon will also execute a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing location.
And following a phasing, Dragon will complete deorbit, reentry, and splashdown. Now, during the deorbit sequence, several events will occur, including trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and then finally splashdown. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida on Friday, October 25th at approximately 12:29 a.m. Pacific time or 3:29 a.m. Eastern time, where it will be picked up by a SpaceX recovery vessel, and our recovery teams will help egress the crew.
And today on board the International Space Station, the crew of Expedition 72 is being led by NASA astronaut Suni Williams. Also on board Space Station are NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Don Pettit, and Nick Hague, as well as cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin, Ivan Wagner, and Alexander Gorbanov. With the 11 crew members on board Space Station and Dragon, as well as 3 astronauts aboard the Chinese Space Station, there are currently 14 people in orbit as we speak, but soon that number will be back down to 10 as Dragon departs. Of course, just like its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous. This requires no action from the crew on board, and so earlier today, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore did help the crew members prepare for departure, and he'll be watching from the cupola, but the prime departure monitoring role falls on NASA's Matt Dominic from inside Dragon. Mission Control in both Houston and Hawthorne will back them up, and speaking of Mission Control Houston, let's go over to Nilofer Ramji at the Johnson Space Center to talk a little bit about how the station crew have been preparing to send the crew home, and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs the space station. Nilofer?
Thanks so much, Sandra, and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The flight control team is primed and ready for this afternoon's undocking operations. Today's team is being led by NASA Flight Director Paul Kanya. Since Crew 9's arrival on September 29th, it's been a busy time during our direct handover period. Over the last few days, the astronauts worked to pack Dragon full of cargo and return for the return journey home. And earlier today, Mike Barrett and Jeanette Epps, both NASA astronauts, worked to remove cold bags in polar freezers, which store cold research samples and scientific experiments into Dragon Endeavour. All of this critical science and cargo is offloaded after we get the crew out following splashdown, and then the scientific samples will be sent to researchers for final analysis in just a few hours. The crew also took their SpaceX suits and got them ready for the journey home. Since getting the hatches closed, all 4 crew members are now suited up in their seats and standing by for undocking. Additionally, teams at NASA and SpaceX have been preparing for undocking by conducting a series of checkouts of the Dragon spacecraft and space station systems. This is just one of the items teams watch as they prepare for these operations and splashdown opportunities. We want to make sure that crew aboard Dragon and the teams who cover them have the best conditions for a safe and speedy pickup. We've got the final go, no-go poll coming up in just a few minutes, where the joint SpaceX and NASA teams will make their final call for Dragon Endeavour to depart station. This is one of the many checkpoints in Crew 8's return that will continue all the way up just before the deorbit burn, giving mission managers multiple chances to assess the weather at the splashdown zones and make sure everything is lining up before Dragon departs. We have continued to watch the weather for the last few days, and there is an opportunity for early Friday morning as we expect to see them splash down just over a day from now. Again, we are live here in Mission Control Houston, just standing by for that go, no-go poll. And the 3 NASA astronauts and 1 cosmonaut are in Dragon Endeavour. They're still docked to the International Space Station. We expect the undocking to take place at about 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. We will wait for that go, no-go poll.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock are complete and nominal. Houston and Hawthorne teams have pulled go for undock at 2100 and separation at 2105. At this time, can you confirm crew readiness for undock?
SpaceX Dragon, we are go for undock, visors closed.
Okay, copy all.
Perfect, and that go, no-go poll that we've been looking for has been completed. So we'll continue to be in joint operations until the spacecraft has entered the approach ellipsoid. That's the 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere around the International Space Station that teams use to monitor arriving and departing spacecraft. So over the last 8 months, Crew 8 has had what I like to call a astronaut's eye view from the space station. They've had an opportunity to capture some pretty amazing views from low Earth orbit. One of the photos that we got was with the space station being about 250 miles above Earth. They're too far away to make things out like cars, people, or buildings, but what they can see are other landmarks around the world. And the long camera lenses they use help zoom in on familiar sights from our home planet. On September 19th, the crew captured a celestial sight with comet C-2023A3 rising through the atmospheric edge towards the sun. The crew had been watching the tail structure evolve over the last little while. And here's another long exposure shot. This was taken on August 11th above the Indian Oceans as star glitter from above. Such a beautiful aurora. And now finally, another iconic shot of the Italian peninsula, or what many of us know as the Boot of Italy, taken on August 1st. Of course, we get satellites collect imagery of Earth too, but the International Space Station is unique in viewing these opportunities because astronauts and cosmonauts can tell scientists on the ground what they are observing and what stands out in real time. So they'll have a few more opportunities to take in those views during their flight home as we prepare for undocking coming up here at about 4:05 p.m. Central, 2:05 p.m. Pacific. But in the meantime, I'm going to toss it back over to you, Jesse, and Sandra, and Hawthorne.
Awesome. Thanks, Nilofer. Separation is set for approximately 2:05 p.m. Pacific time or 5:05 p.m. Eastern time, which is just under 8 minutes from now. At the moment, Dragon is in its final configuration before undocking, and we are waiting for mission operators. They've already completed their go, no-go poll, but they will call out if we will be moving forward with the undocking procedure shortly.
And as we mentioned earlier, just like during its approach to the space station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, which requires no action from the crew on board. Departure is typically a little bit faster and sometimes easier since the crew doesn't have to stop at any waypoints like we see when a spacecraft arrives.
Once the undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of 4 departure burns, which are carefully choreographed maneuvers that will increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. And then from there, a phasing burn will place Dragon on a trajectory to align it with the splashdown site.
And so we did hear that go, no-go poll earlier. Everyone polled go. That is just a time for everyone on the ground as well as the crew on board Dragon to ensure things are in place. All systems are go, as the name suggests, for the undocking, which again, we are targeting just about 7 minutes from now. Now, at the moment, the crew is suited up as they are during a dynamic phase of the flight. We might hear a call out for the crew to also put their visors down ahead of the actual undocking itself. Teams work together to ensure everyone is ready to support undocking. And so again, that poll was one final check-in, and we did get the go for undocking today. So again, following that confirmation that Dragon is go to undock, we are now waiting for the undocking sequence to begin. Once that happens, it will take less than 5 minutes for Dragon to separate from the International Space Station, which has been its home for the last 7 months.
At the planned undock time, SpaceX Mission Control will command the undock sequence start, which begins the automatic undocking process. Now, the first step is for the umbilicals to retract. These umbilicals connect Dragon systems to the space station, transferring power, telemetry.
Undock sequence commanded.
Second.
Some good news there. We got that call out that the undock sequence has been commanded. So again, the beginning of the sequence is the umbilicals retracting. These umbilicals connect Dragon systems to the space station, transferring power, telemetry, and commands between the two vehicles throughout Dragon's stay. So now once that's complete, Dragon will unlatch itself from the space station by releasing the 12 hard capture hooks in 2 separate phases. All that combined will take about 4.5 minutes, and then Dragon will be ready to depart the space station and begin.
Umbilical demate complete and nominal.
Again, another good call out there that the umbilicals have been demated. And then Dragon will be ready to depart from the space station once those hooks have been unlatched and begin to move itself further and further away using its thrusters.
That's right. And while we sometimes do have views of the undocking as it takes place, we aren't expecting those today just due to handover between our satellites. That happens from time to time, but we might get some views throughout the broadcast towards the end once we get past that time period. So Dragon's initial departure from the International Space Station is a little different from other docked spacecraft like the Soyuz, which rely on springs to push them away from the docking port. Dragon will execute 2 short thruster firings to undock using a combination of the 12 Draco thrusters around the base of the spacecraft, with the first 2 breaking any stiction between Dragon and the docking port, and the second slowly backing the spacecraft away. We're expecting that call for the undocking sequence. Well, we actually did hear that call for the undocking sequence already, so we're well underway here and expecting the actual physical separation to occur in 4 minutes at 2:05 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, and with Dragon getting ready for undocking, let's go back to Nilofer in Mission Control at Johnson Space Center to take us through undocking.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandra. So we just heard that we are going through the undocking commands, and they have been sent up. So we'll take a look at the umbilical retraction as that is ready. That should probably take just about a few minutes. Once the umbilical hook is disconnected, Dragon will be relying entirely on its own power sources from batteries generated through solar cells instead of taking power and telemetry from the space station. On console today, we have Flight Director Paul Kanya that is managing the room here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Perfect, and we just heard the call out of the first set of hooks being opened. We'll now look for the umbilical retraction and look for 2 sets of 6 hooks. So this is going to be the second set of 6 hooks that will open, and that will take just a few minutes. Again, the first set of hooks have begun to open, and there are 2 sets of hooks with 6 each, for a total of 12 hooks in all that will be open today. So as we await confirmation, there on your screen you see, as I mentioned, Flight Director Paul Kanya, and beside him Capcom, which is Neil Nagata today. They are the primary folks in Mission Control Houston here, communicating with the crew where necessary.
All hooks open.
Perfect. That was the call we were waiting for, with all 12 hooks now open. Next up, Dragon will execute a short burn just before separation. And there was the call we were waiting for. This is a combination of
Endeavour departing, fair winds and falling seas, and Miyaki Pasaki, my friends.
On Dragon, the circle will never be the same without you.
good words from our crew members departing space station right now.
Dragon, it's been an absolute pleasure to serve aboard the space station and stand the watch. It's in great hands. Godspeed.
Pojo, you'll never guess what I found.
So next up, Dragon will execute.
Roger.
Thank you.
So Dragon, as I've been trying to say, will execute a short burn just before separation using a combination of its 12 Draco engines around the base of the spacecraft.
I never did get Dragon away.
This will break any stiction between
that.
Dragon and the docking port. And then a second burn will help the spacecraft slowly start backing away. We have a fantastic view of a Dragon coming in.
Dragon SpaceX late call, depart burn 0 was nominal.
Perfect, and we've just received confirmation of the nominal burn that just took place. It's a very short burn using the service section of the Draco thrusters to break some stiction from Dragon and the International Space Station. All right, we have confirmed separation here at 4:05 p.m. Central, 2:05 p.m. Pacific, as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying approximately 260 statute miles over the Pacific. That means that Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander had completed their journey aboard the International Space Station, wrapping up over 230 days on the orbital outpost as they splashed down off the coast of Florida early Friday morning. At this time, the crew are all suited up in their seats, and they'll have an opportunity to get out of those suits in a short little while and prepare for their longer ride home. Here in Mission Control Houston, the team will continue to monitor the departure of Dragon as it exits the approach ellipsoid. Again, that approach ellipsoid is a 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere that monitors arriving and departing spacecraft.
And Houston, you can delay my last. Dragon away was confirmed.
Roger that.
Perfect. We continue to confirm nominal burns that are taking place as Dragon continues to depart the International Space Station. As we continue to monitor here jointly, on the right side of your screen,
nominal,
you will see...
And Dragon, at this time, your go to DOF suits in 4.012. And I've got another reminder here that the big loop will be deactivated following Dragon's exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Copies go for 4.01.
So we have a nominal depart burn lasting approximately 16 seconds. And the team continues to monitor the departure of Dragon as it exits the approach ellipsoid, the 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere. The two invisible boundaries around the International Space Station are the approach ellipsoid and the keep out sphere. So these are the spaces where they monitor the arriving and departing spacecraft, and we are currently standing by for the next burn. And with that, we're just minutes away from the next burn, but we are going to pass it over as we stand by in Mission Control to our teams in Hawthorne, Jesse and Sandra. Back over to you as we continue to walk you through this process.
And we've got a lot of action going on, and we've got some really cool views from the International Space Station looking at Dragon Endeavour as it's moving further and further away from the International Space Station. We had burn 0 and departure burn 1 already completed. That departure burn 1 is creating more and more distance between the International Space Station and Dragon, and allowing Dragon to exit that keep-out sphere, as Nilüfer mentioned. And again, some really cool views there.
Station Houston on the big loop. Endeavour's exited the keep-out sphere. Break for Endeavour. Godspeed. We'll see you all in just a little bit.
Neil.
And on your screen,
travel spreads.
You're continuing to see a view of Dragon following its undocking from the International Space Station at 2:05 p.m. while flying over the Pacific Ocean, approaching the western tip of South America. Now, we did just get word that Dragon has exited the keep-out sphere. You might have even seen some of those thruster firings on your screen as we got that call out. The keep-out sphere is an imaginary sphere or boundary that's 200 meters in radius around the space station. It's one of several safety zones set up to govern visiting vehicles either arriving or departing the International Space Station, and you can continue to see these great views of Dragon as it departs the space station, slowly backing away. Now, before moving into the keep-out sphere, all of the spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if for some reason the spacecraft lost all maneuvering. But again, we don't expect that to occur today.
We're now waiting for Dragon to exit the approach ellipsoid, or the AE, which is another imaginary sphere. This time it's a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep-out sphere. Now, one of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. Now, that means the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, again, even if it lost all maneuvering for that call out once we hear confirmation that Dragon is outside of that AE.
So to recap today a little bit, the hatches between the International Space Station and Dragon Endeavour were closed earlier at 12:24 p.m. Pacific. Since then, the crew has settled in to begin their 34-hour journey back to Earth following their undocking at 2:05 p.m. But prior to that, the joint NASA and SpaceX teams pulled go to proceed with undock. The undock command was then sent at 2 p.m. followed.
SpaceX Dragon to ground, cabin mic check.
Got you loud and clear on the cabin mic. Good comm check on Dragon to ground.
Awesome, thank you so much.
And you did hear some communications about a mic check between the ground and Dragon Endeavour. This is taking place because once Dragon exits the approach ellipsoid, the big loop will be deconfigured. The big loop is that integrated loop between Mission Control Houston, Mission Control Hawthorne, the International Space Station, and Crew Dragon Endeavour. But now that Dragon has departed the International Space Station, all those folks don't need to be in the same comms loop anymore, so they're working to deconfigure that as soon as we get out of the approach ellipsoid. So just working through some of those steps a little bit, as you heard. Now, after the umbilicals were retracted just a few minutes ago and those hooks were opened, we did see physical separation take place at 2:05 p.m. Pacific while Dragon was flying over the Pacific Ocean, approaching the western tip of South Africa. Dragon then completed 2 of 4 departure burns and exited the keep-out sphere. And we're now just a couple minutes away from Dragon crossing through that approach ellipsoid point to set the spacecraft and Crew 8 up for their path back to Earth. Again, Dragon is targeting to splash down off the coast of Florida, and there you see another great view of it. Our Cronus flight controller in Mission Control Houston continuing to angle the camera so that we can keep a bird's eye view or an International Space Station eye view on Dragon as it continues to depart further and further away. But again, Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida at 3:29 a.m. Eastern, 12:29 a.m. Pacific on Friday, October 25th, which will mark the completion of its 7-month science mission. And so, again, we are continuing to get those great views. Perhaps if it comes into focus a little more, you might be able to make out those thruster firings. But if you look at the very tip of Dragon, that's the nose cone, and it has remained open since Dragon launched all the way back in March. It remains open throughout the duration of docked operations and will remain open during these phasing hours as well, but it will be closed before we proceed to splash down in the deorbit burn. And we'll be covering all of that more in our splashdown broadcast, but just a little preview of what's to come.
So if you're just now joining us, you are tuned into You are tuned into the Crew 8 departure from the International Space Station. The crew has actually already departed the International Space Station. We've already completed the unlatching of the umbilicals and hooks, hard capture hooks that mate Dragon to the International Space Station. We've completed burn 0 and departure burn 1, and the vehicle with the 4 crew members inside are now moving further and further away from the International Space Station, making their way outside of the, they've already exited the keep out sphere, and now they're making their way outside of the AE, or the approach ellipsoid. Again, this is to keep the crew safe. There's a number of choreographed maneuvers that the Dragon spacecraft has to do to make sure that it can safely depart away from the International Space Station, and then it will soon begin maneuvers over the course of the next 30 hours or so to make its way back down to Earth.
And with Crew 8 now undocked from the International Space Station and on their way towards that targeted splashdown off the coast of Florida on Friday morning, let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about the crew we're bringing home. Commander Matt Dominic was born and raised in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and is married to Faith Dominic, and they have 2 daughters. Matt earned a Master of Science degree in Systems Engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, and he was designated as a naval aviator in 2007. Matt has made 2 deployments to the North Arabian Sea, has flown close air support missions in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and he has more than 1,600 hours of flight time in 28 different aircraft, as well as 400 carrier-assisted landings and 61 combat missions. This was his first space flight.
Dr. Michael R. Barrett, Crew 8's pilot, was selected by NASA in 2000. He's the only member of the crew of Crew 8 who's been to space before, as part of Expedition 19 and 20 in 2009 and STS-133 in 2011. Before Crew 8, he spent 212 days in space. He is board certified in internal and aerospace medicine and has been awarded numerous times for his contributions to space medicine research. Michael lives in League City, Texas with his wife Michelle and their 5 children. And personal and recreational interests include sailing, boat restoration, writing, and cooking good food in harsh or remote places.
And next up is Jeanette Epps. This was Mission Specialist Jeanette Epps' very first space flight. She's a Syracuse, New York native and was a NASA fellow during graduate school. She then worked for the Ford Motor Company, where she received a U.S. patent for her research into auto collisions and countermeasure systems. After leaving Ford, she joined the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, for 7 years, where she worked as a technical intelligence officer before she became an astronaut in 2009. She has a Master of Science and Doctorate of Philosophy in Aerospace Engineering, and she's also a twin.
And mission specialist Alexander Gurbankin was also a first-time flyer for this mission. He graduated from the Irkutsk Military Aerospace Engineering Institute in 2002, majoring in the engineering, maintenance, and repair of aircraft radio navigation systems. He then attended the Moscow Technical University of Communications and Informatics, graduating with a degree in radio communications, broadcasting, and television. He was accepted into the Cosmonaut Corps in 2018 and served as a flight engineer while on board the International Space Station. And that is your Crew 8 crew, who is currently making their way back down to Earth. And we're going to hand it over to JSC with Nilfer. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well, Jesse. Thanks so much, both you and Sandra. So here in Mission Control Houston, in the International Space Station's Flight Control Room, teams are continuing to monitor joint operations of Dragon as we exit the approach ellipsoid. Again, that's the 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere around the International Space Station that teams use to monitor arriving and departing spacecraft. The live view of Dragon departing, it became a little tiny blip on your screen here that you can see, but we see Dragon headed home as our Crew 8 crew splashed down off the coast of Florida early Friday morning. NASA astronauts Commander Matt Dominic, pilot Mike Barrett, mission specialist Jeanette Epps, alongside Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbankin, conducted several science experiments and technology demonstrations over the course of their 3,776 orbits of Earth. The space station is our orbiting laboratory where crew conduct all kinds of science and demonstrate technologies for the benefit of humanity. So here in Mission Control, the ground team works with the crew to conduct this science, and the researchers from all over the world have science on the space station. Over 200 experiments were worked on during Crew 8's time on orbit. And NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps spent some of her time extracting DNA for the genomic enumeration of antibiotic resistance in space experiment. So this experiment surveys the station and the antibiotic-resistant organisms and sequences their DNA to examine adaptations to space. And the results from this investigation could support development of measures to protect astronauts and people in buildings and facilities on Earth, such as hospitals, from resistant bacteria. We see Dragon here getting further and further from the space station and getting closer and closer to Earth. And meanwhile, while NASA astronaut Matt Dominic was up in orbit, he processed cardiac tissue samples for the Redwire cardiac bioprinting investigation. Since tissue samples are bioprinted in microgravity, they are higher quality than those printed on the ground. So the results from this investigation could help to advance the production of organs and tissues for transplant, and also improve 3D printing of foods and medicines on future long-duration space missions. And with that, we've received confirmation that we've just exited the approach ellipsoid. Crew 8, Dragon, are on their way home. I'd be remiss not to talk about NASA astronaut Mike Barrett and what he did while he was in orbit. And he worked closely on an investigation called the Human Brain Organoid Models for Neurodegenerative Disease and Drug Discovery. And this investigation
Dragon
uses
SpaceX
human brain
on
organoids created with stem cells.
The vehicle has exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a safe free drift trajectory.
Great, we just heard that call out, and science will always continue to be front and center with various crews that spend their time aboard the orbiting laboratory. And when they splash down, they'll be extracted first, followed by some of that science I just discussed, and it'll be delivered to researchers on the ground. So while we may not be able to air after we exit the approach ellipsoid, we'll continue to provide periodic updates through our mission audio commentary on nasa.gov. So with that, I will take a moment and hand it back to Sandra and Jesse in Hawthorne.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. Going to cut in here really quickly. We are now 1 day, 9 hours, 10 minutes away from that deorbit burn, committing Crew 8 to their return to Earth. But we've been watching these live views from on board the International Space Station as the crew has departed and they're approaching that approach ellipsoid exit. That's that moment that they will be in a free drift clear area away from the space station for the next 24 hours. And we're seeing these incredible views from onboard the ISS. A quick programming note, we are getting ready to switch over to our live coverage of the launch of SpaceX Starlink 6-61. That's set to launch from Slick 40 here on the Space Coast in Florida in just about 20 minutes time. So we are going to wrap up our coverage here of undocking. If you're watching on the stream that says the undocking coverage, this stream will end, but if you're watching on Dragon Tracker, that stream will be staying live all the way through deorbit, burn, and splashdown, and you will be listening in to those station-to-ground communications during that time as well. So definitely make sure that you stay with us as we follow the position of Crew 8 on their journey home, returning back to Earth 1 day, 9 hours, 59 minutes from now, with splashdown expected around Pensacola. And make sure you join us back here in about 15 minutes for our live coverage of SpaceX Starlink 6-61 launching from Slick 40. If it was your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launch Pad. Here at TLP Network, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. Make sure you engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. And that is going to wrap up our live coverage for the undocking of Crew 8. Stay with us on our Dragon tracker and join us back here in just a couple minutes for the launch of SpaceX Falcon 9.
And we'll see you and our Crew 8 astronauts very soon.